Hello, and welcome to the Art of Intuition podcast. My name is Susan Jane, and I believe that trusting your intuition is the best way to live your life with meaning and purpose. Each week you will hear about how you can connect, develop, and trust your intuition through interviews with other guests and my own personal experiences. Join me to understand how your intuition can guide you towards a life full of meaning and loving purpose. Hello and welcome to the Voice of Intuition podcast. I will fix that soon. My name is Susan Jane and I'm your host for the podcast. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining in, for tuning in and listening to this segment. We have got a very special guest today. Now, we've connected with Desiree earlier and sort of the wheels fell off. Everything went a bit crazy. And so we've been emailing backwards and forwards. And her life has just been completely turned upside down in the last 3 or 4 months. But we're not going to be talking about all of that. We're actually going to be talking about lives between lives, that period between lives. And that's what our main talk is about. But I've got to let you understand what poor Desiree has gone through in the last couple of months and how it doesn't matter how spiritual we are. It doesn't matter what we're doing. Things will make us wobble and things will cause and create different aspects to make us look at our lives differently. And this is what's happened with Desiree just recently. But that's enough of me talking. Welcome on board, Desiree. How are you?
I'm better than I used to be a couple months ago. And hello, Susan. I'm glad to finally be here with you.
Yeah. Oh, it is lovely. Look, I just want to go through, because you have had a real traumatic experience recently, and then we'll get into our talk. But yeah, a little bit about your background and a little bit about what you've been going through, because it's all relevant to where our talk is, where we're going.
Yeah. So like just going back a little bit to June, in the beginning of June, I think it was June 1st, I had Susan on as my guest on my YouTube show and podcast. And I remember commenting that we would be opening and closing the month together, because I was scheduled to be on her show on the June 30th, I think it was. But June 30th found me still in the hospital as part of a month stay with 2 brain surgeries. The second one where they actually cut it open and went in to fix things. The first one left an accident that left me blind in one eye and unexpected. It was a brain hemorrhage that happened. My dad died while I was in the hospital. But I do have something interesting to share with you, Susan, about part of that experience that will kind of tie maybe to this past life and life between lives conversation when we get into that. An event happened in the hospital. Nonetheless, I been through the wringer, and I'm really grateful to be doing pretty well, because I could have not been here at all. I could have lost, functioning and all sorts of things. So really, luckily for me, because of what I do, I am able to, when I'm done crying, get back into the place of gratitude that for what I do have that's good, instead of focusing on what I don't have. So there's my little plug for everyone, that when bad things happen, that we can choose our perspective.
Absolutely. And look, the reason why I brought that up, Desiree, is because, again, I'm going through a bit of a head cold. I had jet lag last week. And, these little things, and mine's only basic compared to brain surgery,
Yeah.
But these little things are hiccups along the way that allow us to reset and have another look at our lives and what we're doing and how we're performing, really.
Mm-hmm.
Change things up, maybe.
And also, even to like having a cold or being sick or surgery or whatever it is, it gives us the opportunity to look at how well we're taking care of ourselves, and what we, allowing ourselves to have downtime, to be okay with taking a break, instead of what I found when I came out of the hospital in particular was after a few weeks of recovery and such, and not just me, but other people were expecting me to be normal,
Yes.
which I wasn't normal in the first place, but to, be back to normal. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. And part of that is, I mentioned my dad died. I'm the trustee. And I'm like, what? My first time I got dressed and went anywhere was to go to his funeral. And then all this stuff, that on top of normal stuff. And I was overwhelmed. And, and I had to get to the point where actually I read an article that talked about after an event like mine, don't try to multitask. It's not going to work. And I went, oh, that is normal for what's going on. And I gave myself permission to cut back on my schedule, to not say yes to everybody, to, shorten my hours with clients. And it feels so much better. So like you coming back, give yourself permission to just not do it, right? Just to say, no.
Yeah, you had 4 weeks in the hospital. I just had 4 weeks in the UK with my father, and it was the same. Like everything was, I prepped to go, so I had everything running smoothly, whereas you didn't have that opportunity. But coming back with jet lag, it was the same sort of thing. I could not think. I couldn't multitask. And this week, when I've had a head cold, so it's gone from 1 week to the next, and it's almost like saying, "Well, you've got to stop. You're doing too much, and you've got to give yourself that space, that break." So yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm glad I did it on a holiday and not had to go through brain surgery, though.
Yeah, I'm glad for you too. I don't recommend it as a way to, and both you and I, we talk to people about intuition and about honoring our inner self. And I think along this way, the universe or God or whatever it is will sometimes, throw nails in the track of your tires to say, slow down, or like pull over. What's going on? And what do you need to do to, take care of yourself and be at your optimum and really be following your heart, because we don't want to waste our time following everybody else's desires instead of what's important to me. Am I doing what's really important to me?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so we've got into that. Now, if you have any hiccups along the way, that's fine because of what you've gone through. I have no problem with that. But what I actually want to ask you about, a bit more into your business side now, you are, I've got to read this out because doesn't come easily off my tongue. Master Clinical Transpersonal Hypnotherapist. What on earth is that?
Right. Well, so everyone's familiar with hypnosis, or not everyone. Some people think it's okay. I have to throw in a little funny story here. Once I donated a hypnosis certificate for a fundraiser, and the thank you note I got from the organization was, "Thank you for donating the hydrotherapy session." And I went, no, we're not, I am not doing that for anybody. Thank you. But so not everybody understands or even recognizes the word hypnosis, apparently. But most people have heard about hypnosis or are familiar. So I'm a hypnotherapist, which means primarily I use hypnosis in a therapeutic way. So helping people overcome obstacles. Clinical hypnotherapy is primarily focused on thoughts and body. Say, stop smoking, stop biting your nails, motivation, the things that people associate it with. However, transpersonal means that it's more holistic, mind, body, and spirit. So I have, and this leads into some of the things we're going to talk about. In my training, we also focus on those things beyond our brain and body, and we can focus on spirituality, the spiritual world, intuition, and so my transpersonal training as a clinical hypnotherapist expands my work and what I can do for people.
So you still do the same concept of you take somebody into like a trance or meditation, into a trance and go into it a bit deeper, but you start to look at things, or you take them back into other areas rather than what's happening in the here and now.
Yeah, and that's just part, like, so, just like a cookbook, we might have a simple recipe, we might have a more complicated recipe. So I actually, as a practitioner, I do it all. I've just had 2 stop smoking clients in the last couple of days, and somebody else, overeating. So I do a lot of the clinical, typical stuff. But also, I have people come for past life regression, or you mentioned life between lives, spiritual regression, which I can describe to you further. Um, and and also, even within or trauma, I do a lot of work with people with past trauma that it's still affecting them in their life as an adult. And so in those areas, I bring in the spiritual side. So I do ask someone, what's your spiritual belief? What word would you use? Do you believe you have guides? Or, and I find what they are comfortable using, and I can call in that sort of energy around them, or we can ask their guides to offer them any help, or suggest that the universe has a plan for them, and or bring in intention setting, anyway, and tie into the spirituality part. And it's really therapeutic. It really is.
Yeah, I can see that too. And the best part about that is the fact that you are asking them what their terminology is, because we all have that different terminology.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're using ones that suit us, it resonates better, and we can absorb it better and get that understanding. So I really, really like that idea. Okay, so you're doing this. Well, no, I know what I was going to ask. Why would people come for a transpersonal master clinical transpersonal hypnotherapist session?
All the things I already mentioned, because like I said, they might find me to stop biting nails, but in particular, they might find me um, based on the transpersonal part. And the master part simply means that I've been through even higher certifications than the typical clinical hypnotherapist. But so people do find me. And I'm just going to again throw in here. Here's something interesting too, because of the transpersonal part, because of the life between lives, or the spirituality, or I also do psychic and mediumship readings, and use some tarot as well. I didn't list a lot of that stuff on my website for quite a long time, because I wanted to be taken seriously. Okay. And because people, as you've probably found out, in just speaking on intuition, people have for quite a long time dismissed it. And if I can't see it and I can't pick it up and put it in a box, then it's not real. But I finally decided to trust myself, go with my heart, and be authentic. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put what I do and really what's my passion in my work on my website. And it's actually expanded my practice and my business, because people find me and say, I've been looking for someone who does this. And I'm like, oh, who knew, right? That, like what they say, if you build it, they will come. Or if you're authentic, you draw the right, people to you. And so, yes, people will come to me because they're looking for someone to do a past life regression. Maybe they've read about it, or seen movies, or heard about it, or they might know quite a bit about it. Or the life between lives is something that most people haven't read about, heard about, but they might, be wondering, why am I here? What's my life purpose? Some people have, talked about soul contracts, or soul families, and that life between lives can answer a lot of questions in that area. What was your plan? What was your soul's plan? And like, what were you thinking? Like, really, why are you with this person? Or why have you suffered these things? And so in the life between lives, it's quite a very deep, extensive, interesting, and honestly enlightening experience that takes the person into that spirit world.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got the two. This is what I'm getting. We've got we've got the past life regression, where you can actually take people back and see what their other lives were like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the in between the lives.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So when you're doing it, are you doing both, or are you doing one or the other?
One or the other. So a past life regression, the process pretty much is we go through the hypnotic process and then kind of flow back through the current life and then kind of stop like before they're born, but then say, now you're on a timeline or a hall of, doors or whatever process I might use, and go back to, and if they have a goal for that, if it's just to find out of curiosity, I wonder what what was a past life experience I had, go back to the past life experience that, is of most interest or has the most answers for you in this lifetime. I usually do try to help it be therapeutic. So bring back messages or information from a past life that can help you in this lifetime. Or sometimes they want to know, did I share a past life with my current husband, or that sort of thing, and go back to the past life where you shared a lifetime together before. So that's the process there. And I take them back on a timeline. And when you're there, and I count back and they land. And then I start to ask questions about what's going on, et cetera, so forth. Life between lives the past life regression takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours for the actual process. The life between lives is about 3 to 5 hours. And it's a very long, deep, progressive relaxation with some breathing techniques, and to really get deep, go back through the current life and back into the past, most recent past life, and then into the death before this life. So it's like making a U-turn and taking through that. So they get a little bit of this most recent past life experience, but we don't focus on that. We bring them through that to their death before this birth. And there's that space that, like, where do you go between lifetimes? And they experience the whole kind of, for most people, it's, even if they've never heard of it before, have a very similar experience of sort of like the tunnel of light, or moving fast and going into these different stages and experiences of meeting their soul family. They may appear as the physical bodies. Often they appear only energetically as sort of like orbs of light. Which was my experience. And then it goes through the process of being able to move through there and ask questions of what's often termed the council, about, any questions they might have about, like, what am I supposed to be doing? What did I learn? What do I need to overcome? I had a client go through this, and they were, it's a beautiful experience. You're like, whoa, I'm energy, I'm light, and it's amazing. And at the end, he says to them, and we're talking, they're half awake, half asleep, being able to describe, almost like be able to be in the dream while describing the dream, practically, kind of. That's a good good way of explaining it. And he says, I don't want to go back. Do I have to go back? Do I have to come back again? Meaning, after this lifetime, does he have to come back again? And they're like, yes, you're nowhere near done. And as the idea that the soul progresses with every lifetime, like, that you've got work to do, you're get back in there. It's just fascinating, the messages people get and the answers they come back with.
Absolutely. And before we go any further too, if you want to connect with Desiree, her website is transhypnotherapy.com. So www.transhypnotherapy.com. You'll be able to get all the information on there. Okay, so I really enjoy where you're going. I have done a past life regression myself. And where I was probably quite intrigued in is there's a lot of people that talk about, well, in circles that I hang around in, they talk about past life regression, all good circles. They talk about that sort of thing. I guess when I first heard it, and I was only in my 20s when I first heard it, it was like, I understand people wanting to know about past lives, but how does it actually help me in the here and now? And that was my biggest question, because for me, going back and finding out what was going on, umpteen different years, lifetimes ago, excuse me, is that relevant for the here and now? And I think that's what I'd like to get a little bit clearer understanding. I know my answer, but I wonder what the listeners, if their thoughts were like that too. So what is one of probably the main areas why people want to go back? I know you said curiosity, which was probably my main area, but there is a lot more to it, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. And like I said, I'm a hypnotherapist, so I use hypnosis and all the processes. Generally, I even if the person just has curiosity, I always throw in something that has the potential therapeutic value to them. So when we end a past life regression, often a question will be, how is this life you just went through in the past life, how is that the same or different from your current life? And that might answer or review, am I repeating patterns? Am I finding, like, say if someone was murdered in a past life by their, partner or something, how does that reflect in a relationship that might be in this lifetime? Are there repeated patterns? And that's one of the big ones, is because our soul, our spirit kind of learns, and this is what I believe and what most of my resources say as well, and it does make sense, is that just like we grow up from being 2 years old to being 80, if you fall down and skin your knee, how many more times are you going to fall down and skin your knee? Like there's that metaphor about if there's a pot in a pothole in the road, or you're walking and there's a hole in the road and you fall into it. How many more times are you going to fall into the same, hole in the road until you learn to walk around it? So our souls can have the same experience. And sometimes we, may lifetime after lifetime repeat bad patterns that if we go into a past lifetime and recognize, oh, wait, that's the same sort of thing that's happening now. Break the pattern, break the negative pattern, right? The dysfunctional pattern. And it gives this information that I can change that. The other thing is, when I talk about spirituality, we will ask for, say, their guides to come forward with a message at the end. In case they didn't come with their, unless if their wheels didn't pick up what they need to learn, ask the guides, what do you need to know? And is there a symbol, a message, or a word for you to look for as you go forward for synchronicity? And that might be, that there might even just be like a picture of a cupcake. The guide might say, here's, and they're like, a cupcake, whatever. But the next time the person happens to be in a cupcake shop or sees a cupcake, pay attention to what's going on and look around you. Who are you with? What's happening? And why is there this synchronicity? And it just opens up again the intuition to pay attention and be aware and to just be more open to information coming in. I don't know if that answered you completely, but
yes, it does. It does, because again, if we're going back into these past life regressions, we need to be able to actually have a reason to take it forward. Yes, curiosity is fantastic, but when you actually have that therapeutic side to it, where it's actually helping us going forward, then to me that's a win-win. And when you get win-win, that's really cool.
it is. And for example, on a couple, I've done it a few times, not enough times. I'd love to do it many more. But one of the times I ask, sometimes of this curiosity, or do I have a past life connection with the sort of work I lean toward, right? And I asked to go back to a time when I had what's the right word? The first time. I asked for the first time that I did any sort of this, like, I want to say metaphysical, or the first time I had some sort of connection with this sort of thing. And I found myself like on the top of a mountainside with others. And I know this sounds cliche, but we're like wearing these white shift like things. And we take care of and manage the people in the town down below. We don't interact, but I was in charge of basically the time wheel, like this big stone wheel, and that was my job. I turned the wheel. And in the questioning, it's like, well, who, basically my mother did it before me and my daughter will do it after me. And this is how it was. And I'm still not sure about the message, but it was just this almost like a stoic community and it was before time. It was before time as we understand it now. It was before this era, before the flood or whatever. It was that like interest. So it's just interesting that to kind of reflect on that. And then even to say, well, am I managing other people's lives? What am I doing to help others, maybe even move their lives forward, right? So I kind of see that metaphor maybe, that, turning the wheel for people.
Yeah. And sometimes to go forward, we need to go back as well.
Yeah, into a past life regression.
Yeah. So I would love to just bring my little experience forward because I think you will enjoy this, right? So I first did a past life regression, and I did it. I did a DIY, a do-it-yourselfer. I was.
Okay.
So I did it myself and I had a guided meditation on the recording or whatever it was. Did it myself, and it was not good. I do not recommend do it yourself to anyone. So it worked. I mean, I went back, but because it was recorded, you had to come back from the past life in their time frame.
Right.
Whereas when you do it with a professional, they're watching you, you're getting the answers, you're communicating, you're interacting. You know when, as a professional, to bring that person back.
Mm-hmm.
As a recording, it doesn't do that. So I've got to this particular stage in my past life regression, and it was at that stage where I really needed, it created more drama, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So there was a lot of guilt, there was a lot of questions, there was a lot of, I'd basically come to this door and I had to decide whether I was going to go through it and go back into, it was a monastery, open this door, go back into this monastery and accept what was going on inside, or I had to walk away from what my whole life was all about in this monastery. And so I've come to, it's like that crucial part of the movie, and I had to come back. And
it was, now we're counting you back. 1, 2, 3. Open your eyes. You're like, no, wait a minute.
No, don't take me back yet. I need to know what I did. So it was, and then of course I had this guilt playing on my mind because there was things happening in this monastery that should not have been happening in my morals, especially to young children. And, it was really affecting me. So I actually went to a proper hypnotherapist and we did the past life regression and we went through it. And I didn't go back into the door. I refused to go back in and created my own life and did my own teachings and trainings and whatever away from the monastery. But it's really funny now that you say what you've just said, because I have this real deep dislike for organized religion.
Uh-huh.
Religion's fine, organized religion. I have this real, and I shouldn't say it's a dislike, it's a real not trusting. I thought, and I feel that it's come back from that era, from that time at that monastery when the facade of it was that we're these type of people, but deep down
we're taking care of you, little girl. And it's like, no, don't make me.
And I was a man. I was a male monk, and it was in that era where they had all the brown outfit, and I sort of think of like a Robin Hood era, in that sort of era.
Well, the Franciscans have
yes,
that.
That's it.
Yeah. Did we ever talk about this before? Did we talk about this at all? Because I remember saying, well, I don't think we did, because however, what's really interesting is your story is very similar to someone else, not someone I did, but who was talking about a past life, and they had to, it was during the war and they were a female nun, who had to leave and then go to another monastery, like someplace else to live out this whatever the war was. It was a early war, but then they left the monastery and they started their own school or something. And I'm like, I wonder if you guys ran into each other in that past life. Maybe. You both had a similar experience. They lost faith because of what was happening. They left the monastery and started, something after that war had passed their country. And I think they had started out in Germany of all places, and then gone to, like, I want to say Spain, and then returned. All right. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is ringing a bell, but I don't think it was you.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't that one, because I didn't go. Yeah, didn't travel that far. I stayed. I remember the monastery was up high, and the town was down below, like the hill, and so I went into there. But I didn't actually start any organized. It was just more of a gathering and allowing people to connect and have different views. And yeah, it was but she took me all to my deathbed there, and I was just quite in bliss. So I was on my deathbed, but I was really happy and really, yeah, it was a really lovely experience. It was really nice. But it wasn't until you said that before about how we can bring those things forward. And yeah, I have got this deep distrust for organized religion.
Yeah, it's a fascinating experience, and I'm glad you got that resolved instead of just always wondering, right? And and it's true that, just like things, being a hypnotherapist, I'm always thinking of the subconscious mind, and people say something's at the back of my mind, or I just have this feeling, right, and that there's something and we don't know where it came from. Well, sometimes where it came from, where there might be something lurking, could be from a past life. It could be from something that we couldn't even go back in this lifetime and put our fingers on, that there wouldn't be any reason. So it's just interesting. And I think it's a valuable tool. And anyone listening to this show is probably open to that idea. A lot of people, like I've said before, would just say, well, that's crazy. And I'll be like, yeah, in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was the past life regression. Now, when you were talking about the life between lives,
Yeah.
you mentioned a few things there that really resonated with me too, because I've had a near-death experience. And I feel that what you were saying about the tunnel, the light tunnel and things like that, it resonates very well with what they class as a near-death experience too, because there was a lot of stuff I saw like that.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit more about that world in between worlds?
And like I said, different people have a different experience of it. And so, I've heard some people speak, but similar experience to what I had. If anyone's interested, Michael Newton is an author and a hypnotherapist, and he wrote 2 books, Journey of Souls, and well, if you find Journey of Souls, you'll find the other one, Something Else of Souls. But he kind of stumbled upon this with clients, and then he decided to actually do it on purpose, study it on purpose, and came up with along with the man who was my trainer in hypnosis, that they worked together and came up with this actual process to take someone to this space on purpose. And so it was Alan Chips was the man who trained me, and he's since passed, and he and Michael Newton. So that's where the life between lives hypnosis sprung from. And so my experience was, you go through this and you're guided. And so I'll fast forward. What I saw, there was like darkness, and then the facilitator, the hypnotist is like, okay, move this way, move that way. Like, if you're not seeing anything, we get help. And eventually I kind of went through some lights, and then I came into this sort of I want to call it a room, but it was sort of like a cave-like feel to it. And I did the process not too long after my mom had passed in 2019. But I came into this space, And and there were just all these beings of, I want to call them beings, lights, like orbs of light gathered. And I recognized them energetically, I want to say. And and then as I'm kind of in this space full of all these orbs of light, I thought, wait a minute, all of these are people that are alive. This is not making sense to me. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. These people are all alive. And then we moved forward, and I had a larger white orb beside me that was sort of like helping me along. And the literature says, oh, that's your guide. I'm like, okay. So we moved forward, this orb of light and I. And then the next room were, again, more orbs of light, but of those who had passed on. So I just thought that was interesting. Like, oh, a room for the living and a room for the dead. And then I recognized my mother by energetically. I didn't see her face or her body. She was kind of gold and orange. And, my godfather was green orb back there. And so it was just a fascinating sense to recognize, decide, oh, that orb is my mother. I see it, and I felt it as my mother, and her light even came forward and sort of like enveloped me. And it was very emotional. It's like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And, going forward. So, and I looked down, and I'm like, well, the facilitator, the hypnotist says, well, look down. What do you look like? And I'm like, oh, I'm blue. I'm a blue orb of light. I'm like this blue plasma like. So different people will actually see physical beings represented in physical body, more like you might expect to see them. Others will see the energetic beings. And I started answering and forgot what the rest of your question was.
that was just lovely. That was
thing since they cut a hole in my head. But go on.
No, that was perfect. That's what I wanted to know, because again, what's the reason for doing that? What's the reason for going in between? And yes, curiosity is part of it, and it's a strong part of it. But I feel that when you've done something like that, it makes you more grounded and more alive and more accepting and more, I don't know, for want of another word, a better person in the here and now.
Well, it certainly has helped me personally understand or, believe that this is not all there is. It gives a sense of permanence, that we don't go away, we don't disappear. Oh, and I need to add here. So one of the things that happened during that summer, this was 2019, I said my mom had died in the summer, in July. And she appeared to me in what looked like her physical form, but I knew she wasn't really standing there. Right as I was waking, and I was still in that hypnagogic, half awake, half asleep state. And she appeared to me, and I won't get so long if I go into what she wanted. She wanted to tell me where she wanted to be buried, which was a mausoleum. So she kind of showed me in my mind's eye, and I didn't understand it until 2 days later when we were at the cemetery, and I said, oh, that's what that meant. And that's what the stones were. The guy says, and here's our new mausoleum. And I told my dad and my sister, and that we all went, that's where she wants. Okay. I started talking again. But so the idea of being energy and all this. So, and then about 2 or 3 months later, I'm like, well, I'd been dreaming of her a lot and feeling in touch with her still. And my dad had no dreams and all that. And he felt he was missing her so badly. And he said, so I thought, well, she came once before. I'm going to ask her if she has a message I can give to my dad. And so once again, as I was just waking on purpose, I asked her, I said, Mom, can you come and give me any messages for Dad? Which she did. And that's a whole nother story. And if anybody wants to hear it, it's Ghosts in the Spirit World on my YouTube channel, right? Intuitive Journey with Desiree. But I described the whole thing there, and it's perfect for Halloween. But So she told me where to find a letter for him and what it looked like, and that it had been, but it turns out it had been written many years before. But I felt like I really had this great connection with her, like she wasn't just dropping in and drifting off. And I didn't see her this time. I did not see her. It was more like a psychic conversation. And I said, well, since I've got you, what's it like there? And she says, oh, it's beautiful. Everything's beautiful. I'm beautiful. And I asked who else was there. My sisters also passed away. And, and I asked my godparents. She goes, yes, Ann, and, they're here. Your sister, yes, your sister's here. And she even mentioned a dog that she had even before I was born. And I'm like, okay. And then she says, you're here too. You just don't know it. And that woke me up. I was like, okay, I'm up. Like, I'm here, pinching myself. I'm good. I'm good. Okay. And I'm thought, that's weird. Like, what does she mean by that? Then in preparation for doing a talk on the spirit world for a group I belong to, I was reading some old literature, and I'm looking through an old book written about 100 years ago. And in this book, the person's discussing the spirit world. And he says, not all of the spirit is in your physical body. So when your soul, that part of your spiritual self always stays in that spiritual realm. And
Yes.
and it's what that made sense. I'm like, oh, my mother says I'm there too. And he even went on to say that those who die, when they are up there, they have everyone there. Everyone's there that they want to be there, and they don't want to see them. You're not here. So that would explain that I was there too, and I just didn't know it because my mother was experiencing being surrounded by everyone that she loves. Whereas down here, we're only separated because we got this heavy duty, I wouldn't even call it a veil. It's like an iron wall, a lead curtain between us and that spiritual world unless we work on it. Work, getting through it. Then I always like to say, if you get 3 points of agreement, then you've got, the truth. Then it was later in November that I was taking the course for Life Between Lives, and with Michael Newton's investigation and work with these people that he took into this state of hypnosis, they all said the same thing, that only a percentage of our energy comes down into this physical body, that percentage is always left behind up there. So if you think about it, instead of thinking 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, if you consider it as a ongoing stream, that we're always here, we're always here, we're always here, we're always here, but where we can allow ourselves to send our focus to, just like if you pinch yourself, you focus on where you just pinched, but the rest of your body's still there, right? It doesn't mean the rest of your body disappeared. So where we can focus on, and during meditation, hypnosis, that sort of thing, we can focus into that spiritual part of ourselves and that frequency. It's like changing the dial on a radio, that all of the frequencies are there, but we are all of those frequencies. We can just dial one way or the other with practice. So
yeah,
that kind of is part of this thing, is that yes, we are always these orbs of light, but for the most part, we are interacting through this part of us.
Yeah, and I think that's what the people sort of want to see, that visual. And even when you say an orb of light, you think, well, that's that big or this big or whatever big it is. But the reality is, it's not even an orb of light. That's how we are visualizing it, and that's how we're seeing it. Because I absolutely agree. We're completely connected. It's where we want to tune in, like you say, to where we are, and what's relevant at the particular time. So I love how you explain that. But Desiree, we are starting to run out of time. So now, like I said, people can connect with you on your transhypnotherapy.com on your website. And obviously we'll have all the details down below. Can you do this sort of work? Like, I'm in Australia, you're in America. Can you do this sort of work like that? Or do you have to be there in person?
Well, I'll tell you what, before COVID, I probably would have said, oh, I don't know. But because of that, it's really expanded the possibilities of doing this. So yes, I do have I do hypnosis and past life regression on Zoom, and I've had no issues, and it's been just as effective. It's just been being like in the room. I have not yet had a client do Life Between Lives on Zoom, and so I'm open to it. I just haven't done it because I mean it's expensive and it's long, so I have not explored doing that. Because it's like quite a stretch of time, and so whereas the Life Between, I mean the past life regression has been just fine and very fascinating, and it's when we talk about there's no such thing as space and time, this has worked quite well. Doing the hypnosis over Zoom or even messenger video or that sort of thing, it's worked well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like you say, because there is no space and time, I think that COVID has allowed us to step up a little bit in our way of thinking and allow us to do that. Because, I mean, so many times you hear about healings that are happening, where you can send healings and oh, yeah, that's a little bit of rubbish. But it isn't. And I know it isn't. I know it because I've done it myself. But I think COVID has allowed us to expand our minds, or other people to expand their minds and say, yeah, we can still do that. We don't have to be in the same room. So that's really cool. So connect with Desiree on that side of it. Any last little tidbits, because we are actually running out of time?
I was going to say, just to verify what you were just saying, I do Reiki also, and I've done distance Reiki, and I've even surprised myself when I'm like, okay, I feel something here, I feel something there. And after the session, I go over it with them. I'm like, hey, there's something going on with your knee, is there? And they're like, yeah, I just twisted it. And, I'm like, oh, who knew, right? Like they're miles away, but I'm having their, energy in front of me feeling, So yeah. So
it can be done, and it's done really well too. I guess like anything though, Desiree, you get the shonkies that are a little bit, I don't know if you know that word, but you get those ones that are a little bit, they tend to take the money and run type thing.
And that is one thing I always say, and I probably say this because I have done the work. I've gone through the certifications. So I say always check somebody out. I'd like to have a conversation with the person beforehand. I don't just say schedule and pay and then we'll see about you. So I recommend that people should, really check out who they're working with, because we're going into your mind, you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's sort of like you're turning on the recording and then like, okay, time's up.
Yeah.
So you really want to trust your hypnotherapist. It makes it that much easier for both of us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was so exciting. I love how you've talked about the different areas and how it clarifies it. It makes it easier to understand. Yeah, for sure.
Good. And thank you. I'm delighted to be here talking to you. Finally.
Well, don't go away, because I'm going to talk to you when we finish here.
All right.
Okay. All right, guys, you've got to jump on the website and have a look, because it's amazing. It really is. Like I said, I have done past life regression and I love it. It was really good. It was just curiosity, but it was really good. I think I'd like to do it again now, and knowing what you'll know already, have a look at it a little bit differently. So do it professionally. Don't do it DIY like I did. Don't do it yourself. Do it professionally, and then you know that you're getting, you're being looked after, you're being nurtured while you're experiencing this, because what I was experiencing was pretty traumatic, and you needed to have somebody professional there to help you through it, to get the most out of it too. So subscribe, like, share the podcast. Thank you for being a guest on the show, and I will see you all next week. Okay, bye for now.